Good evening. I now call to order the Planning Commission meeting for August 15th, 2024. Ms. Parker, do we have a quorum?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
O God, we come to offer up a word of thanks for your goodness and your mercy. As we come together to promote the well-being of the people of Goochland, bless the process as well as the product. Give us a blessing so that our words and actions are one in unity, and that we are able to listen to each other. In so doing, we shall with good heart walk hand in hand to face the future, and continue to give us the wisdom and courage that we need. It is in your precious name we pray and give thanks. Amen.
Amen. Has everybody had an opportunity to read the minutes from the July 18th meeting? And are there any comments, discussion, or motion to approve?
I move we approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ms. Parker, do we need a roll call for that?
Oh, we can, just for clarity. Mr.
Sure.
McLaughlin?
Aye.
Mr. Cosby?
Aye.
Mr. Patak?
Aye.
Ms. Kowalski?
Aye.
Mr. Kimberly?
Aye.
Approved with a 5-0 vote.
Thank you. I will now open to a citizen comment. If you wish to discuss any items not listed on tonight's agenda, please come forward and state your name, address. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Green light is start, yellow light is 1 minute, and red light indicates end of time. Okay, seeing no one? Shut citizen comment. Ms. Parker, are there requests to defer?
We have no request to defer, additions, deletions, or changes to the order of the public hearings. Our first public hearing item tonight is in District 1, CU 2024-12, application by Pleasant Grove Farm LLC, requesting a conditional use permit CUP for short-term rental unhosted on 103.92 acres at 4615 Old Fredericksburg Road on tax map number 610620. The property is zoned agricultural general A1. The CUP is required by County Zoning Ordinance Section 15102 in accordance with Section 15285G. The comprehensive plan designates this area as rural enhancement area.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Members of the Commission, Tom Coleman, Principal Planner. As Ms. Parker mentioned, this is a conditional use permit for an unhosted short-term rental. This application was deferred from the July 18th meeting. Since that meeting, the applicant has amended the application to remove the request for the public assembly place. So this application is only for the short-term rental unhosted. Around the time of July 18th, during that Planning Commission meeting, staff did meet with county staff, CD staff, and the fire marshal met with them on site to discuss the implementation of the conditions as they applied at that time to both the public assembly place and the short-term rental. But as I mentioned earlier, the case is only for the short-term rental unhosted. This property is located in the northwestern part of the county. Looking at the aerial photo, you can see there are a couple of residential neighborhoods in close proximity to it, including Hayesville Estates and Hayesville Farms, sort of abut the property to the north and to the west and to the south. The property is just east of the Old Fredericksburg Road, I-64 interchange, and between the subject property and the interchange includes Midpoint Industrial Park, which shows up on the comprehensive plan and the zoning. You can see some industrial zoning that M1 and M2 zoning, which is associated with the industrial park. The subject property and all the surrounding properties is zoned agriculturally. The subject property and all the surrounding properties are designated as a rural enhancement area in the comprehensive plan. Just go over quickly, some of the structures that are on site. This is the main house, sort of the featured structure on the property. It's about 4,900 square feet. This is really the subject of this application. The application is to use this for short-term rental unhosted. As I mentioned now and mentioned later, the applicants do have other activities that are not governed by the CUP that they will be conducting on site, and they can use some of the other structures on the property for those activities. This is the guest house. It's about a 100-acre property, and they do have that main house up front. And this guest house, they've indicated that they can live in the main house and they can reside in the guest house when guests are staying in the main house. So as I mentioned earlier, this application is for an unhosted short-term rental. And they can live in the main house, or they can reside in the guest house while guests are using the main house. The property is being farmed. They indicated they plan to use farm-related agribusiness uses, such as a pick-your-own farm, a cidery, education, and other activities. Those activities are all allowed by right and are not subject to the CUP. Kind of a zoom in of their photo. Again, looking where the main house is. This is about 100 acres and showing where the main house is located closer to Old Fredericksburg Road. That's kind of where the barn. I've sort of indicated where the parking is. And I mentioned earlier the parking can be utilized for some of those agribusiness and agritourism activities. And then the guest house is located more towards the rear of the property. There was a community meeting held in April. At that community meeting, the applicants did discuss the short-term rental unhosted. They also discussed a number of other uses that are not part of this application, including wedding venue, the day camp, even the potential for a shooting range. All those uses were discussed. Generally, the attendees were supportive and did not express really any concerns with any of the activities that they had proposed. As I move into the conditions, the applicants have indicated that they would prefer to have a 10-year expiration date rather than a 5-year expiration date. The 5-year expiration date is consistent with our practice of recommending a 5-year expiration during the initial consideration and approval of a CUP, and I can let the applicants speak to that more during their presentation or discussion. This application is generally consistent with rural enhancement area land use designation. Let's move into the CUP conditions. I did delete all the conditions that had to do with the public assembly place. I did not include those deletions here. They've just all been deleted. So the conditions that are before you would just regulate the short-term rental unhosted. The first one would allow the short-term rental unhosted use, and it would require to take place in the main house. The second one would prohibit any parking on Old Fredericksburg Road. The third one would limit their occupancy to 10 persons. Number 4 would require the carbon monoxide and the smoke detector. Number 5 would require them to provide access to the site that's in compliance with both Goochland Fire Rescue and community development requirements. Number 6 would provide for no amplified music or sound after 10 p.m. Number 7, they have 2 ways that they can delineate no trespassing. They can install no trespassing signs, or they can use color-coded tags and make sure that their guests are aware that those tags represent, including no trespassing. The property should maintain a residential appearance. The guests are prohibited from discharging firearms of the property, and the guests are also prohibited from having fireworks. With condition number 11, there are 4 of these conditions that we do require them to notify guests of, and that includes the limit of 10 people, the no outdoor sound, amplified sound after 10 o'clock, no hunting or discharging firearms of the property, and then the recognition of those no trespassing signs or no trespassing markers. Number 12 would be the 5-year expiration date, and then the last one would be our standard condition as it relates to the transfer or lease of the property. And that concludes our presentation. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, Mr. Coleman? Okay.
Quick question. I saw looks like quite a long driveway between the main house and the guest house. And I think I saw somewhere emergency access. So has someone gone out and looked at the fact that that long driveway is sufficient for emergency access?
Well, for the access, when they were proposing the public assembly place, the access was a real primary issue of making sure that that provides access for people congregating on the property. Now that it's really just a short-term rental unhosted, we really treat it more like we just treat it like a house. And we want them to have safe access, but it doesn't have the same, they're not required to get the PUD, and they're not required to do all the type of improvements that might be required for the public assembly place. So I think having the long driveway here, having the driveway here, doesn't raise any concerns for staff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. The applicant would like to speak.
Good evening. I'm Mark McConnell. My wife and I, Sherelle, and I live at 4615 Old Fredericksburg Road. Mr. Cosby, that really long drive just goes to the little house that we live in. So one of the things is when the very first time we looked at this and it was unhosted, we never leave the property. And my poor wife will attest that she almost never leaves the property. But the access, there's sort of a U-shaped driveway that serves the main house. And I also wanted to mention that the parking I don't think will ever be a problem because we now have 40-plus parking spaces. Nobody would ever park on Old Fredericksburg Road. If I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
You've been before us a few times.
Yeah, I know. It's been a long road.
Thank you for coming.
Mr. Coleman mentioned that you would prefer a tenure.
We would. 5 years goes by in no time at all, and we feel like it sort of clogs up your system for us to come back and ask for exactly the same thing in 5 years. I understand staff's thinking that if there's a problem, if for some reason our tenant, the guests are playing loud music at night or something like that, I think we have a pretty built-in system for addressing those complaints because, well, first of all, we know all the neighbors, but secondly, they could come to you and there could be an enforcement proceeding. So really, 5 years goes by before you know it. And if we achieve the financial success that we hope to achieve, we hope to amend this to bring back the place of public assembly in 5 or 10 years. So it's just, it's just going to be the same thing that we come and do and the same meetings we have. And I think that the mechanism for addressing any sort of issues is really already there.
All right, but as written, the application is for 5 years.
Right.
Are there other things that you want, do you like?
No, we're fine. We have,
That's the only.
there are 5 suites in the house, 10 people, that's a good number. I think anything more is tough on the house. We don't have really a problem with any of those limitations, the parking, the smoke detectors, all that stuff is just fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, thank you very much.
All righty.
No, I'm good.
Go ahead.
I promise I'm good. I'm good.
Okay. Are you okay? Did you hurt yourself?
I tore my Achilles.
Ow!
I was just going to make,
We wanted to make sure we had that on the record.
I just wanted to make sure that the commission was aware, as well as the applicant, that the limit of 10 is not just a septic tank limit, which is where, but also under the building code, if you house more than 10 people, you actually now have to have a completely different system for the building, because it becomes, I don't know if it's a bed and breakfast, becomes a different use. So the limit of 10 is not just, that's what your septic allows, that's also under the building code, as many as you can have without falling into a different use classification. So I appreciate that the applicants are willing to limit it to 10, but in case you all were not generally aware of that, that 10 is pretty much a magic number for building code issues.
Thank you. And now open to the public hearing. If you would like to speak, please come forward and state your name and address. You have 3 minutes. Seeing no one, close public comment. Any discussion, comments?
I don't see a problem raising it to 10 years. Again, it seems like that might be, we might see you again. So I would have no problem going, amending it to 10 years.
Do you want to make a motion?
Sure. I move that the commission recommend approval of conditional use permit CU 2024-00012, subject to the imposed conditions with the following amendment. Amendment being a 10-year instead of a 5-year CUP.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Roll call vote, please, Ms. Parker.
Yes, sir. Mr. Kimmerly?
Aye.
Ms. Kowalski?
Aye.
Mr. Patet?
Aye.
Mr. Cosby?
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Aye.
The motion to recommend approval as amended passes on a 5-0 vote. This case will be scheduled for public hearing before the Board of Supervisors on October 1st, 2024, with a recommendation of approval as amended from the Planning Commission. Our next public hearing item tonight is in District 3, RZ 2024-8, application by Robert R. Harris and Karen S. McAndrew, requesting a proffer amendment to rezoning case RZ 2005-6 to reduce setbacks and buffer width from Maidens Road on 5.973 acres at 2267 Parkers Hill Drive on tax map number 4336010. The property is zoned residential rural, RR, with proffered conditions. The comprehensive plan designates this area as rural enhancement area.
Apologize, I don't have control of the screen. I want control of the screen. I was plugging it in to see if it would,
It's not working for us.
it was working a second ago.
We believe you.
This is on this machine here? Or it's coming from this machine? Said it would work in a minute ago. If I have to wing it, we'll wing it.
Can we just switch to keyboard?
Actually, let's see the keyboard.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Apologize for the break. Break's over. As Ms. Parker mentioned, this application is a zoning proffer amendment. The subject property is located just outside the courthouse village. Look at their photo. There are residential subdivisions to the north, west, and south that include Oakland subdivision, Lane's End, to Preserve at Parkers Hill, and Longwood. And this is a lot in Algernon Wood subdivision. The properties to the west of Maidens Road are in the courthouse village, but they also are residential. So the character of the area sort of reflects a low-density or rural residential character. Looking at the subject property is zoned RR, and it shares that zoning with the other lots in Algernon Woods subdivision. There's some RP zoning, which is associated with the preserve at Parker's Hill and Lane's End, and the other properties, although the residential are zoned agriculturally. The properties to the east of Maidens Road are a designated rural enhancement area in the comprehensive plan. The areas to the west of Maidens Road are actually in the courthouse village, and they have a single-family residential designation. As I mentioned, the applicants own a property in Algernon Woods subdivision. It's a 4-lot subdivision. It was rezoned in 2005. It included 13 proffers, 10 of which will continue to be enforced and are not subject to this application. But they are requesting to amend 3 of the proffers, and those 3 proffers just apply to this lot. They're requesting to reduce the driveway setback from 300 feet to 150 feet, looking to reduce a building setback from 350 feet to 100 feet, and to reduce a vegetative buffer from 200 feet to 100 feet. I'm just going to show you the other 10 proffers quickly, just because they are part of the history of the property and a part of the history of the subdivision. But they are not subject to this application. I'll move forward. And now we're moving into really what the heart of this application is. This is the amended text that they are proposing. Sort of a graphic on the side that sort of a zoom into this lot. And it does show the dimensions or the boundaries of the lot, the 250-foot natural buffer, which is labeled on this graphic. The 350-foot building setback is labeled on the graphic. The driveway setback is not labeled, but it's 300 feet. But what I've kind of added on to this is kind of a red line showing about, it's not survey quality, but it's sort of giving an idea of where a 100-foot setback would be on the property, and then about where a 150-foot driveway setback would be. And this is just a graphic showing the 4 lots that are in the subdivision. And then again, those buffers are labeled on this graphic, and the lots highlighted in blue. There was a community meeting in May. There were 13 attendees at that meeting. In summary, there definitely were some people, some of the attendees that were supportive of the application, and there are some of the attendees were not supportive of the application. I think generally those that were supportive of the application felt like these were restrictions on the property that other people didn't have, and that they should be allowed to have greater freedom and greater use of their property. I think some of the people that were opposed to it generally felt that, they purchased the property, eyes wide open. They knew these were in place, and that there was a reason to have the buffer area and the reasons for having it remain, and that this is sort of a habitat area, and there's a large area of really mature tree stands here, and that's part of what it is and what should remain with the property. So I think the sort of very high-level summary of some of the reasons people were supportive and people were not supportive of the application. This application is consistent with rural enhancement area land use designation. And that's it. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So this applicant is consistent with the rural enhancement area?
Yes.
And there are no other requirements to the other 3 lots for large setbacks?
Correct. They're correct. Correct.
That's all for me. Any other questions from Mr. Coleman?
I might have missed your saying this, Tom, but just to double check, the proposed proffer changes mentioned in the staff report have in fact been submitted by the applicants. So should the commission be wanting to approve the case, it would be as amended. And I just wasn't sure if I heard.
No, correct. You should have, that's what we gave out to you. And we didn't mention that in staff report. Thank you, Tara, that we were in possession of those, but we weren't able to include them in the staff report. But when it comes time to make a motion, if the planning commission is so inclined, you would need to waive the time limits to accept that amended language.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. The applicant like to speak?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rob Harris, and I'm here with my wife, Karen McAndrew. And thank you so much for allowing us to come forward and talking about our property at 2267 Parkers Hill Drive. Yeah, so as far as the comment that I would like to make is that the one word I would like to use is excessive. When you go and look at the other properties that are around us, from some of the subdivisions that Mr. Coleman talked about, there is no type of proffer or any type of setback that is in this extreme setback that we have on our property. It pins us into our property. We're only able to use about 1.5 acres of our 6 acres, basically, because of the setbacks. I'm not able to take down, any trees to expand the driveway, to be able to allow delivery drivers to come in. I've had $9,000 worth of damage done to personal property that has been paid out for that reason. It doesn't allow us to be able to, again, to use our property just like everyone else in the county in Goochland County. So again, I just want to reiterate that we just feel that it's excessive, and we would like to have what everyone else does. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Why 100 feet? Can it be,
That was consistent, my understanding was that was consistent with the county protocol. When you go and look at the other subdivisions, that's what they're allowing. The subdivision down the street's allowing 100 feet setback as well. So that's why we went with that.
do you have any plans to build anything?
Well, at this point, this is kind of the first step, as far as, at that point, we would be just like everyone else. If we decide to build something, that would be something that we'd have to submit to the county and see if that would be allowable.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the expansion of the driveway. You talking about making the driveway longer or wider? Or
So
both?
it could be both. Again, trying to find some flexibility with the use that we have. If there was a picture that Mr. Coleman had up there earlier, you can kind of see where in the picture how we're kind of pinned in that far right corner. Actually, go back to the other one you just did. The first one that you had up there, actually. Yeah. Next one. Hit the next one, because you can see the whole thing. If you look at that setback, you see the 350 building setback. So our house sits in that back right corner. And so we're very limited to being able to expand from that whatsoever. So the driveway literally follows that, in this particular picture, the furthest right line of that 350 building setback, because we're at 300 feet. So we are only able to go up to the driveway on that side. So it really does pin us in there, and we're just trying to be able to have the ability to expand.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
We'll open to the public hearing. If you would like to speak, please come forward, state your name, address. You have 3 minutes to speak. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment.
Tom? Do you know why these proffers were in place in the first place?
I know, we don't know why it was proffered. I mean, we could speculate why. Obviously, it was to protect a rural view shed, and to have sort of enhanced buffer. You know, why they landed on those specific numbers, can't provide a good answer on that.
Is there any worry from zoning that having a 100-foot buffer off of Maidens would be an issue?
Well, I mean, there was a recent ordinance amendment that was passed by the board in July that would require a 100-foot buffer. That was not in place when the subdivision was in place, when it was, in 2005, when this was zoned. But, you know, that would be the requirement today.
And just to clarify, none of the other 3 lots have any type of a required setback like this one,
As far as
correct?
the other subdivisions?
Yes.
Let's go back.
Or the other, I'm sorry, the other 3
The
lots.
one zone
I'm sorry.
The lots that are
I'm sorry, lots in Algonine Woods?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
It's
None
just
of
a setback.
those
just this one.
have
It's
the
a
setback.
That's the only one on Main.
Yeah, okay, okay.
Now, as Tom pointed out, there are other subdivisions near there where there are houses on Maiden's Road.
Right, I was gonna go back.
Is it Turtle Creek?
In the other subdivisions, I'd mentioned the other subdivisions, like Longwood does not have any such buffer requirement. The Preserve at Parker's Hill, they have a buffer around the perimeter, as I recall, it's 50 feet around the perimeter. Oakland does not have a similar requirement. Lane's End does have a 200-foot proffer buffer along Fairgrounds Road. So there's a, you know,
It meets our code. The setback, the setbacks that
Those-
they want to.
those were, I mean, like for Lane's End, that was a part of the zoning case. It was proffered as part of the zoning.
Right, but what they're asking now meets code, correct? 300
What they're
feet,
asking
150.
now, yeah, I did make a note on that. For the side, for the driveway, for under access management, it'd be 125 feet. So 150 feet, you know, would be a bigger restriction. The building setback for Maidens Road, it'd be a side yard on a corner lot. It would only be 35 feet. So the 100 feet would be a restriction on the property. And as I mentioned, when this property was rezoned, there was no buffer requirement. Today, if a new case came before the commission, it would be 100 feet. So what they're asking for would be consistent with what the ordinance would require today.
I'll make a motion to approve as amended. I move that the commission.
Mr. Chairman, does there need to be a vote to waive because the proffers were actually accepted late? Do you first vote to, I don't know quite how you do it, you first vote to waive the late proffers to have those considered?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay, if you would start with that perhaps.
okay, so when we waive the timeline. for
Right,
this
to accept the
application.
proffers.
And now, I move that the commission,
But, so
I'm
you
sorry.
have to make a motion for the waiver.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, and have, I know we didn't get that set up for you
Sorry.
appropriately.
And it requires a
I make
second.
a motion to waive timeline for this application. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Roll call vote, Ms. Parker?
Mr. Kimberly?
Aye.
Ms. Kowalski?
Aye.
Mr. Patat?
Yes.
Mr. Cosby?
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Aye.
The motion to waive the timeline is passed on a 5-0 vote. And now we'll need a motion and a second for the case.
I move that the commission recommend approval of proffer amendment RZ 2024-00008 with the following amendments of waiving the time limit.
And the proffers as they were submitted amended today.
As the proffers were submitted and amended today.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Roll call vote, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. McLaughlin?
Aye.
Mr. Cosby?
Aye.
Mr. Patat?
Aye.
Ms. Kowalski?
Aye.
Mr. Kimberly?
Aye.
The motion to recommend approval passes on a 5-0 vote. This case will be scheduled for public hearing before the Board of Supervisors on October 1st, 2024, with a recommendation of approval from the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Is there any old business?
There is no old business. There is one item of other business, a director update from Ms. Sherry.
Okay.
Good evening, members of the commission. I'm Jamie Sherry, Director of Community Development. I just have a quick update as to some of the public hearings that are coming up, as well as one community meeting. On September 3rd, the Board of Supervisors will be hearing 5 public hearings. They will be hearing in District 3, a request for a renewal of a short-term rental unhosted by Beverly Thurston. In District 4, they will be hearing a CUP for overburden placement and stone processing by Luck Companies. In District 2, they will be hearing a conditional use permit request for a small contractor equipment storage from Nicholas Flemian. And there will be 2 countywide ordinance amendments. The first one is for the FEMA floodplain ordinance amendment to be compliant with what the federal government is requiring to stay in the flood insurance system. And then the associated maps will go with that. And then the last public hearing for the Board of Supervisors that evening is a zoning amendment as it pertains to floor area ratio. And then on September 19th, before the commission, there will be 2 applications for a public hearing. In District 3, a conditional use permit for a short-term rental unhosted, as well as a place of public assembly. This is for Mount Bernard, which is located in District 3. And the other public hearing is in District 4, which is a conditional use permit for an accessory family housing unit detached, and this is by the Donaldson is the applicant. And for community meetings, we don't have our traditional application community meetings, but I did want to make you aware that the county has been undergoing a study. It's the Southeastern Infrastructure Study. I know many of you, you all know about it, but for those at home, we do have a website that you can go and learn about what we've done thus far. At the community meeting, which will be on September 10th at 6:30, the location will be at Hope Church on Patterson Avenue. At that meeting, we will be rolling out some of the results of the study, and there will also be an interactive tool that is kind of cool that the community can come in and practice on or play with. But that's all I have for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. If there is no other business, this meeting is now adjourned.